First of all, I want to thank you, Brian, and particularly you, Jamie, for getting me involved in this. I met Jamie a year and a half ago at SIGGRAPH in Vancouver, yeah, we were both, I think, very mutually just inspired by each other's works and being able to communicate about the stuff about virtuality and well, in the context of metahumans and well, in my case, the use of the ability to master those characters' faces.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's what we'll be talking about today. As Brian mentioned, I have a master class called Making Faces. And you know what, I'm going to share a screen and cut to the chase. So yeah, sharing sound and optimizing, that should be all good. And sharing now. And you should see a white blank PowerPoint session here that I am now going to commence.
Yep, we've got you.
All right, awesome, good. So yeah, I have, as Brian mentioned, I have worked in CG animation, character, and storytelling film animation for a long time now, going on 30 years since my first film was shown at SIGGRAPH in 1994 or 95. So I've always had this obsession of doing good character animation with the facial aspect of those characters. And so I have, I've learned way more than I would have believed or even wanted to know about faces in that 30-year period of time. And that has led me in the last 5 years, 6 years actually, to forming a company with some colleagues of mine from the University of Toronto for doing facial animation automatically. And obviously a big application is kind of stuff we're all doing here in developing content, really good content for interactive games, as well as production, and as well as working in the avatar space. So it's a big space and it's a huge subject.
Hey, Chris?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Sorry to interrupt. We were just wondering if it's possible for you to remove the rest of the Zoom interface. I don't know if you were on a single monitor.
Oh, I
here.
would love to. In fact, let me see if I can do that. I like this part, the part at the top here. So in fact, let me see if I can move that over. Thank you. Sorry for the interruption here, but I'm doing just that. How's that? We're good. We're just seeing a boring blank white space now.
Correct.
Awesome, good. So that boring blank white space is the first frame of a video, which I'm going to play now, that shows what I am doing at the moment, or for the last 6 years, as I mentioned, which is I am one of the founders of a company called Jolly, and our big project here is to make facial animation and to make that accessible and quick and procedural and automatic. Yeah, here we go. Hopefully this plays. Sorry, let's try that.
What Jolly tries to do is it tries to get to the root of what is being expressed in the vocal performance and put that on a 3D character.
I have free will.
I knew this since I was 3 years old.
Jolly is a suite of tools and a suite of services that result in what we think is the coolest and best and highest quality facial performance on characters.
We're okay. There's nothing wrong with us.
Based on procedural animation, based on audio dialogue, audio speech from a voice actor.
Slow, deep breaths. Your cortisol and adrenaline spiked, but the soft activated your hormone blockers. Nothing happened. You're alive and well.
The Quality of Mercy, from The Merchant of Venice, Act 4, Scene 1.
Come andrà tutto bene se tantissime persone?
We want to see not only good lip sync, but a great facial performance in each of these languages.
Sobre a venda de bolsas.
야우치가, 내가 기어츠게나. 우라이만 내일만 오고 살았대 기계가 아니다.
Il a fait très beau aujourd'hui. Je suis allé à la piscine cet après-midi et je suis allé voir un film ce soir.
If the lip sync is right, you don't notice. If the faces match the performance, you don't notice because you're too busy paying attention to how awesome the game is, how much you care about these characters. And that's what we want. That to me is the sizzle.
Yeah, okay, so sorry, let me keep that going here. Yeah, hold on, Shift F5. So, yeah, we have developed this product called Jolly that currently is in 2 platforms. For the last 3 years, it's been a solid platform. It's been a solid part of many customers that we have now in Maya, and we are in December, I believe, going to release the final version of our Unreal version of Jolly. And the idea there is that you can go between platforms like Maya and Unreal, develop content, facial animation content, and cross-platform, and play that back and generate that animation interactively. So we are pretty close to having a product release. I think you're going to find really cool. Those of you who try out Maya in either Unreal or Maya. So, but what I'm going to be talking about is not so much Jolly and not even Unreal or Maya. I'm going to be talking about faces, facial animation. And the thing about facial animation, character animation, in which you are looking into the soul of that character, is that the hardest part is it involves nothing having to do with computer or even the craft of animation. The hardest part is observation. And if you can observe and see what is going on with real human beings' faces, and I mean not just what's going on as you see it, as a person's talking to you or expressing emotion, but actually know something about the mechanics of the face, the psychology of the face, the physiology of that face, you will you'll be making a quantum leap in the craft of animating that face, whether you're doing it with hand keyframing or performance capture or procedural. Okay, so that's what I'm going to be talking about here, is the science and art of seeing faces and knowing what's going on with those faces. Okay, so the thing about us as human beings is that, as I say here, we're hardwired to recognize faces and expressions. Even from something like 100 meters away, we can tell if a person's a friend or a foe. We can tell if that person is pleased with us or angry with us instantly. And the reason for that is that we, in our brains, human beings' brains, we actually do have this hard wiring in which there's a part of our brain, I won't get into neurology too much here, but just for your info, it's called the fusiform gyrus. It's a big part of a human brain that is dedicated to looking at human faces and recognizing a face of a person, and recognizing that emotion that that person is conveying. Okay, so good is that acuity of ours as human beings that we can, for example, recognize a person after 40 years of not seeing them. We can sense when somebody is lying. We can tell the emotion within, even when nothing's happening. That's Mr. Bob Dylan. I'm going to show a clip of him a little bit later here. We can see complex human expression in something as simple geometrically as like the character Dory in Finding Nemo. Okay, so as I said before, the really hard part about what I'm going to try to teach is the art of seeing a face. So I'll just say that I teach this. I have been teaching this course for many years now, and Brian mentioned all these places that I've taught it at. I teach this course in a variety of formats, ranging from like a lecture, which is what I'm, of course, giving right now, to something that's far more extensive. Like I've taught this course as a boot camp that has gone for 7 straight days, 8 hours a day. There's enough material to fill out that, believe me. I've taught this as a semester course, like at the University of Pennsylvania, University of Toronto. So what I'm going to be showing you here is a very condensed version of the subject matter that's in those longer versions. So what I'm showing you here, seeing the face, involves completely nothing having to do with computers or animation whatsoever. It's simply seeing, and in particular, drawing. Okay, so what you're seeing here is obviously nice portrait that you would do, like in something like, hopefully those of you who are animators out there do life drawing on a regular basis, because this really is the heart and soul and the fuel for being able to see stuff, in this case, be able to see faces, right? So what the first part of my course, in fact, it takes up a good day and a half, is just drawing. We go through drawing exercises, and we start with basic proportions on a face. if you're going realistic, that is, and not going, stylized or cartoony, you want to be able to have a sense of what these proportions are, like the rule of equal thirds here. Chin to nostrils is around the same as nostrils to eyebrows, around the same as eyebrows to the hairline. So those kinds of proportions we go over when we're doing like simple things like frontal face portraitures. And then we start to get a little bit more challenging where we're going to 3/4 views. So when we start going into these like 3/4 views, there's an important thing that's really happening at this point, which is that you are starting to actually visualize, being forced to visualize in 3 dimensions, right? So when you're looking at something like, what does an eye look like when it's placed, inside your head in a 3/4 view, is that you have to start considering that that eye is not just a circle surrounded by eyelids, it's a sphere surrounded by something that resembles like a visor, like those eyelids being like the up and down part of a helmet, okay? And when you start being able to see and imagine those things in 3 dimensions and convey them in a drawing back into 2 dimensions, your mind is actually starting to open up significantly, literally getting an extra sense of depth, an extra dimension in how you are starting to do drawing. So these drawing exercises aren't so much to get, great portraits, and we're not concentrating on any technique about using charcoal as opposed to graphite or any of that stuff. It's really just an exercise as a means to a very important end, and that end is visualization. Mouths are a bitch to do, particularly when that mouth is open. In 3 dimensions, it's the problem is that it's this weird shape that you will see in 3 dimensions. I'll do it with, I don't know if you guys can still see can you guys still see me as opposed with my screen there, or is it just a screen at this point?
We can see you, Chris.
Oh, awesome, good. So you see that I've got my fingers right here. So what I'm doing here is what a mouth is like, and that mouth is what's called a saddle shape. Okay, so when I'm putting my fingers, thumb and index finger like this, and it looks like a round circle, like an O, but if I turn it in profile like that, it looks like a C, right? So in other words, it's convex in this direction and concave in this direction, and that presents a huge challenge when you're trying to draw something. And so we go through stuff like, what does an open mouth look like? Because as I say, it forces your brain into thinking in that 3rd dimension in a really big way. And it is my experience that if an artist is open up to that 3rd dimension, in literal 3rd dimension in visualizing like a face and drawing that face, you start to be able to notice things that you would otherwise not notice in how that face is looking here. So yeah, there are exercises in drawing here, and these, even really accomplished artists who I've taught find this very challenging, okay? So like what you're showing, what I'm showing here are some obviously portraits, but you see with all these portraits, you see that little cube, that red, that yellow, cyan, magenta cube there. And it's a depth cube that I kind of instruct students to draw in advance of drawing these 3/4 faces, because you start to see where features on that face fall in a 3-dimensional space. So yeah, I'm not going to spend any more time on that, but yeah, just to say that starting to draw those faces with the end to kind of like being able to open up your visualization of how faces actually look in 3 dimensions is a huge step towards the stuff I'm going to show now. So part 2, the anatomy of motion. So this is where we get into not just the visual structure of the face, but the machinery of that face. So one of the teaching tools that I have, and this is, what you see here is Valley Girl, one of the internal, rigs that we have in Maya is this lady right here. And, I'm going to just play a little bit here.
Quality of mercy.
You see, yeah, she talks fine. She's using Jolly to talk, but what you see here is the sort of visual aid here, which is the muscle doppelganger of this character, Valley Girl. And you would have noticed, hopefully if the video isn't too choppy here, you would have noticed that she's got basically muscles happening over here, and those muscles are lighting up and dimming down depending on at the moment how much each of those muscles is being activated during when she's talking there. So yeah, what you see there, hopefully what you saw was just this huge organization of this dance, if you will, of dozens and dozens of muscles in her face firing off, doing it in this intricate way that allows her to say that line, quality of mercy, effortlessly. And we do, of course, as human beings, we do that effortlessly. But as an animator, doing that on a simulated face is not effortless at all. It's very effortful. So that's what I'm going to try to bring you through here. So a lot of you are probably familiar with this acronym, but if you're not, FACS, that's the facial action coding system, which is it is the foundation for CG facial animation. It has been so for about 40 years now, facial action coding system. A lot of folks are like, we should maybe move beyond the facts. Like some of you might hear that, but the thing is about FACS, facial action coding system, is that it is a foundation that is a really good foundation for how faces work. That fellow that you see there in those 7 screenshots is Paul Ekman, who, along with Wallace Friesen and a small group of other people operating out of San Francisco at the time, developed this thing, facial action coding system. So what is that? Well, it's a library. It's a very simple to understand library. Think of it as like either, like as I say here, letters of an alphabet, or think of it more like, say, each element of the periodic table of elements, right? So the notion is that there are this finite number of things that a face does one at a time. And if you can get a library of each of those individual actions, we call them action units, and if you know how to combine those action units together, you can get full and incredibly expressive performances out of characters' faces. So basically, there are a bunch of these, and I'll just say there may be, depending on how you count, a few dozen of these action units. And each action unit corresponds to one single thing that your face can do one at a time. So here's a relaxed face, obviously. The woman on the bottom right-hand corner is an actress who I worked with when I taught at the University of Pennsylvania. Her name is Felicia Light. Great actress, Shakespearean, like doing basically Philadelphia's Shakespeare festivals at that time. I was very privileged to work with her when I was teaching this a few years ago. So you'll be seeing a little bit more of her, and she graciously volunteered to do poses corresponding to these action units. So there's a big anatomical element here. So I'm going to go through a few of these action units here. I will just say that there are, depending on how you count, around 25 of these action units that are really important to know about. So about the same number as letters in the English alphabet. Okay, so I'm showing 2 of them at the same time here. So this is a very simple one. When you raise your forehead, if you can still see my face, you'll see me raising my forehead, and I am now doing this thing, combining these 2 action units, action unit 1 and 2. So and Felicia, of course, is doing that in the lower right-hand corner there. And just to say, that's a very simple thing I'm doing. I'm raising a muscle in the front of my forehead called the frontalis muscle. And it's a big old sheet muscle that is just uniformly pulling up on my eyebrows and my forehead, as I'm doing right here. So if you use that muscle all at once, you are using action units 1 and 2, as I said. If you just do the middle part, like I'm sort of doing right here, I can't do it very well. Felicia, as you can see, can do it really well over here. You are only using one of those 2 action unit 1. So when you combine them together, you get, what we typically do when we're surprised or when we're emphasizing something as we're talking. And when we do that, you see these 3 or 4 lines, worry lines, these guys right here at the top of a person's forehead when they're using action units 1 and 2. I'm going to try to go really quickly through here. As I said before, in longer versions, I spend a long time on each of these action units. We're going fast here. So another one that involves the eyebrows is the opposite motion. Instead of going up, the eyebrows go down, and that is action unit 4, used by a muscle called the corrugator muscle, that one right there. This muscle originates at the top of the nose, part of the nose called the glabella, and inserts into the middle and outer parts of your forehead. And when that muscle contracts, your eyebrows go down and in. And when they go down and in, they have the skin around those eyebrows has to go somewhere. It can't just compress. It's got to wrinkle. And that's the thing about these muscle actions, is that there's generally is a signature wrinkle that happens. And what you see here on Valley Girl, what you see on my face when I'm doing it right now, and what you see on Felicia's face is these two vertical wrinkles. Sometimes there are 3 or 4 of them. And that those wrinkles occur because the eyebrows are going in and down. And so generally these wrinkles form perpendicular to the direction that those that muscle is pulling. So that corrugator muscle is pulling down. She's getting Felicia is getting these vertical lines. In Sweden, by the way, we call these worry lines. In Sweden, when I taught the course there, when you do this, they call that the 11s, which I find great. So it's like, hey, what's wrong with you? You've got 11s on your face. So yeah, when she's showing the 11s here and using that corrugator muscle, something's going on. Generally, it's something that is serious or something that is negative happening. That's when we use our corrugator muscles. So let's move on to something a little bit more neutral. If you're looking into the sun, or if you are showing confusion or exasperation, you might do this. Use your action units 6 and 7. This is a thing called the muscle that is called the orbicularis oculi muscle. So I go into these Latin names for muscles, and they're kind of scary Latin names sometimes, but they actually do mean something. So orbicularis means something that goes around, orbit, orbicularis, and oculi, as you might or might not know, is eyes, right? So it basically says something that goes around the eyes, orbicularis oculi. And indeed, there's a muscle that goes around the eyes, and when we squint like that, that muscle contracts. It's basically, it's like, the term is sphincter. Okay, so we have we know about all of us know about one sphincter muscle that we have in our bodies, but there are actually a bunch of them, and these eye muscles are examples of other sphincter muscles that happen around each eye. The orbicularis oculi, allowing you to squint, as she's doing, as Felicia's doing, as I'm doing right now. So to move on, we're still on the upper face here, moving down to the middle face here. So now we're starting to get into muscles that show real emotion here. And there's as you see here, a set of muscles on the left and right side that pull straight up on your lips, as I'm doing right now. And that is what you might call a sneer. That muscle is the labius superioris muscle. And again, a funky Latin name, but that actually just means labius is lip and superioris is upper. So it's the upper lip muscle pulling straight up on the corners of your lips. And it gives you this kind of negative emotion, as Felicia's showing quite convincingly, little right-hand corner. Okay, a similar muscle to that gives an even more intensely negative emotion. Sorry, I just actually not showing it. I'm going, let's go positive now with our emotions. Let's go to the zygomatic major muscle. So this is a big, powerful muscle that comes out of your cheekbones, in other words, your zygomatic arches, goes inward diagonally and attaches to the corners of your lips, left and right corners. And of course, it pulls diagonally upwards and backwards and outwards. And the result is, as you can see, a very pleasant expression on a person's face, in other words, a smile. So that's action unit 12, zygomatic major, lip corner pulling. Let's move to the lower part of the face here, and we start to get into the muscles that are not just used for expression, but used for speech as well. So this action unit 18 is a big, huge, powerful, and important muscle called the incisivis muscle. And this is a muscle that you make when you make a kissy face like that, or if you're pronouncing ooh or oh, okay? It's the muscle that rounds your lips. It's a muscle that attaches to the corners of your lips and drives them forward and inward. And yeah, your lips form into a big round O-shaped shape when you use this muscle, action unit 18. Okay, moving on to something that does the opposite, not rounds the lips, but stretches the lips, and in this case, stretches it downwards. This is the weirdest muscle, I think, in the face. It's actually two muscles. One is called risorius, and the other is called platysma. And I'll do it on my face, and you'll see when I do that, you see my lower lip stretching. And the weird thing is on the neck, you see these vertical tendons pop out on your neck. Robert De Niro's showing it pretty well there. So it's a muscle that distorts and deforms a huge swath of your face. So you use this muscle, this risorius and platysma pair, when you're in stress, okay? So yeah, like you look at Felicia in this photo here, I think you'll agree that in those other photos I'm showing, she's this lovely, beautiful looking woman, but in that face there, when the animator speaks, she is way off model. And that's the thing about this particular muscle. When you show stress, when you're using a muscle like this, you're personally going off model quite a bit. So it's a muscle that you want to use with great care when you're animating, okay? So let's go to just muscles that are more or less functional, like not emotional, but they do things that just allow you to speak and allow you to just hang out in real life. Lip funneler, like that. Lip tightener, like that. And lip presser, like that. So this is actually all three of those things that I just showed, 22, 23, and 24, are the output of a single muscle. So all those other muscles I was showing before are basically only one muscle, like that zygomatic does one thing, pulls on your lips and you smile. This is a really much more versatile and smart muscle. It does at least three things all at once, depending on how you want to use them. It makes your lips go out like that. It makes your lips go in the opposite direction, and it makes your lips go up and down like that. Okay, so this is this is a case of one muscle, 3 or 4 different actions with that one muscle. Orbicularis goes around, oris, mouth, goes around the mouth. That is one heck of a muscle to have in your face. It allows you to speak, and it allows you to chew with your mouth. Keep your lips shut when your jaw is open. So basically, it allows you to be really polite in polite society. So, I'll go into this one, of course, big, elephant in the room, which is your entire jaw. Like, there's a bunch of muscles that control your jaw, and they go up, forward, and backwards, makes it go down and up, makes it go left and right. So this bunch of muscles, you see I'm listing a few of them here, allow you to do all sorts of things in 3 dimensions with your jaw going in any, X, Y, and Z directions. So I'm just going to refer to this as jaw drop and jaw thrust and jaw left, right. Okay. So I've shown a few of these action units. How many are there? I mean, I go through a few more when I do the full version of this course, but yeah, if you count them up, depending on how you count them, you can get, anywhere from, say, like I have here a low number, 40, 41 action units. And if you can put in all these like nuanced secondary motions, you come up with maybe 100 or 200. But the point is that it's not that many. It's a few dozen, depending on how you count. It's still a finite number of these individual action units. And that is facts. It's that library of each individual unit, one at a time. So that's the simple part. The hard part, of course, is putting all that stuff together, right? So you've got, say 41, as I said, letters of an alphabet. If you combine those in any arbitrary way, you can get an infinite amount of, well, the analogy here is words, right? Each word being a particular expression, okay? So it's the skill of the animator, of course, to be able to know how to animate those 41 or so different things in order to get just the right kind of expression on the face that's convincing and realistic sometimes, or at least believable and compelling. Okay, so like, one of the exercises that we go through are these photographs, like I'm showing here or here, like George W. Bush right here. What's happening with George W. Bush at this very moment? So the exercise here is, well, he's using a little bit of action unit 1 because you see his eyebrows go up in the middle. He's using action unit 5, that's making his eyes widen. Obviously, action unit 20, lip stretching, I'm showing Robert De Niro there, and probably a little bit of action unit 15, that is a little bit of frown. So like this thing, like we go through exercises one after the other, and one of the homework assignments in the long version of the course is write up a little bit about what's actually happened on these photographs that you're seeing here. And then we get to this guy here, this is Billy Idol from 1983, I think, video called Flesh for Fantasy. I'm just gonna play a little bit of Billy Idol here. Okay, so what the heck just happened? Whoa, that, okay? Like, how does somebody do that with their face? That, that still that I just stopped on is so compelling that it actually became a meme. You may have seen this, posted on Facebook and Instagram, whatever. Yeah, the Billy Idol sneer. What's going on with that Billy Idol sneer? Well, I'll show you that little Valley Boy in this case. So there's Valley Boy, and there's this muscle thing happening over on the right. Okay, so I'm just going to play this, and you'll see what's happening. What is Billy Idol actually doing there? Well, he is opening his jaw. He's doing a little bit of smiling, a little bit of obviously sneering, but only on one side. But he's doing a bunch of other stuff. He's doing nose wrinkling, a little bit more, touch more smile, chin raise. Okay, these chin raise is a big part. Okay, he's funneling on just the right side. He's doing a little bit of left lip stretch, but on the opposite side. Okay, he's doing some squinting, eyelid closing, corrugator muscle, action of forebrow furrowing, and so on. So we're adding these things in, tilting his neck back, and let's see how we did here. Okay, I mean, so yeah, you see some of the really important things on that bizarre Billy Idol sneer that we're able to actually put onto our character, Valley Boy. Like I'll put out like these signature wrinkles that I'm talking about, like there are the 11s happening here and here. There's a really important one you see that these little pock marks here on his chin, and those pock marks there are from this, when you do that, when you like do this pouting, you're using that muscle called the mentalis or action unit 17 in order to create that. And that pock marking is a real indicator that there is something really complex going on with that lower face. So you look for these things, and that's the drawing exercise that I was talking about before. You really want to find these features like these little pock marks, these little wrinkles in here. And when you start seeing these things, you might see them ordinarily, but it's like when you really see them consciously, you're able to really you're able to fully understand not just what Billy Idol is doing, but how Billy Idol is feeling. And when you can start doing that, you start empathizing. And when you empathize, your animation starts to go up by quantum leaps. Okay, so yeah, moving on, we start to look at other situations. Like this one here is a situation in which we did a workshop, Felicia and me, and in this case, she is reading lines because she's doing a performance tonight, and I come in to the room and I am a complete and utter asshole.
Oh, Felicia. How are you doing?
Hi, Chris.
That's great. Great to see you.
Yeah. It's great to see you too.
So yeah, you got my email, right? About the $1,000.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know if now is really the best time to go over it though.
I really need this money. I emailed you yesterday about this, and I mean it's for really good. I'm moving in with your best friend, Michelle.
Yeah.
I need it for a security deposit.
She told me, and I know a lot has happened for me since yesterday, so I actually need to be doing something else.
I mean, sorry, what are you doing there?
I have to learn my lines for a show that I have to do tonight, and it's really important.
You're doing acting still? That's cute.
Thanks.
But enough of that. I need the money.
You need the money? You know how many times I've lent you money before? Do you know how many times I've gotten that money back from you?
Okay, she's getting mad.
Friends, be a friend. I had to leave town.
You had to leave town. Yeah, you had to leave town before you gave me my $2 grand back last time. Now you want me to give you another $1,000?
Wasn't $2 grand.
Listen, I have some.
Just stopping it right here. So what you're saying, obviously, hopefully you're saying she's getting pissed off. She's getting outraged. She's stressed out because I'm in the room, and she's starting to show signatures on her face that betray that anger quite obviously. Like, look, I just stopped it at random, but look down here. You see the vertical tendons? Remember what that muscle was? Was that Risorius and platysma muscles? She is stressing out, immediately stressing out.
Something important to do that I need to do
now. Be
a
friend.
So another thing, good, I'm getting lucky here. I'm stopping at this random point. So check out her eyes at this moment. She's not really doing that much else with her face at this very moment, except her eyes. And what you see with Felicia's eyes is that you see the whites of the eyes above her irises. Now, normally, like when we're just hanging out in real life, you never see the upper eyelid generally always covers that upper part of the iris, and you see the lower part, like down here, but never the upper part unless you're really, really emotionally aroused, in this case, angry, like Felicia's showing at this very second.
Friends, right?
I need you to get out. I need you to get out right now.
And one of the things
please.
No.
Please.
No, it's not
I'm not
happening
leaving.
this time.
Oh, no.
It's not
You're always
I
like
need to
that.
do
So yeah, right there, screaming, okay? So that she's completely erupting at this point, and all the stuff on her face is starting to come alive because she's really, really angry. So one of the exercises that I have for my students is, tonight, when you see, if you have a significant other or spouse, go home tonight and pick a fight with your spouse and check out what he or she's doing with her face at that very moment. And what you're going to see are things like, well, I mean, you'll see that kind of angry face, like the eyebrows going in, what you associate with anger. But, I stopped it randomly at another point there, and out of context, it looks bizarre because she's blinking at that point. She's not necessarily showing anger at that point. Okay? That. And if you look at a person who's really pissed off, you will see that that person's not necessarily showing that stereotypically angry face. They're doing a bunch of stuff with their face because they're agitated and their muscles are dancing around very quickly. Okay, so that's the thing about anger. You don't necessarily show it in any snapshot like right now, but you will see a bunch of stuff happening with an emotionally aroused person who's really pissed off. And you'll see a few things. I'm getting to one, a couple of these right here. What I'm showing here are the stereotypical angry faces, like, the eyebrows coming in that V shape. And that V shape is happening from that one muscle I mentioned, the corrugator muscle, action unit 4, pulling inward and downward on the eyebrows at the same time as you're seeing that muscle I was showing with Billy Idol, that dimpling of the chin happening. So that dimpling, that I'm doing it right now, mentalis muscle, that dimpling is a result of some agitation happening in the lower part of the face, okay? Let's bring that out to a full rage, which is like a scream, like Felicia was just showing there. And you see a bunch of stuff happening at the same time. You see that dimpling still happening, but now you're seeing that lip being stretched downward and the tendons happening here, that risorius and platysma muscle that Felicia was just showing there. Like when you're screaming, and I'll show another example later, you see that muscle face on the right is really all lit up now, and that's screaming is a really good exercise in bringing out, working out all of those muscles on a face. Your face, I mean, if you do a scream, and if you stop and relax after that, you'll feel kind of a burn in your facial muscles when you do that. Okay, so let's move on to this guy named Jason Spencer Galsworthy. He was a animation director at DreamWorks when I taught this course a few years ago, and he's going to show a different emotion. So you see, he's going into grief mode right here. So, oh shoot, hold on, I'm gonna go back here because sorry, let's play that. I may not be able to, sorry guys, do this again. And just to save time here, I'm just gonna scrub forward here so that we can see some stuff, really important stuff here, okay? So like, what do you see right here? Like clearly, Jason is in the middle of crying, okay? But one of the really paradoxical things about grief, sadness, and crying in this case is that he's smiling. You see that the corners of his lips are going up and backwards, like he's making a U shape with his mouth there, right? And that U shape is, I mean, he is totally using the same, or a lot of the same set of muscles that one would use if one's joyous or laughing, the zygomatic major muscles. But you look at his face at this point, and there's no mistaking. I don't think you would mistake this look for a look of happiness at all. But just to say, paradoxically, it's largely the same set of muscles. And if you know that, and if you know to be able to animate those smiling muscles, zygomatic muscles, but at the same time do a bunch of other stuff that makes it look like he's crying and not smiling, then you have a compelling emotion on his face. And I'm going to get a little bit more into that. Let me zoom my slide from where I stopped, and we get into a second emotion. You see, I have 6 of them here, and this is a big important thing. 6 basic emotions. I showed anger, getting to sadness now, and I'm going to get to those other 4 there. But just to say that one of the things that Paul Ekman from Facts, the guy who popularized Facts, was establishing is that that across different cultures around the world, human beings show variations of these 6 basic emotions, okay? And like all the nuanced emotions like jealousy or embarrassment or exasperation or whatever are kind of shades or hybrids of these 6 different emotions. So I'm showing them in their pure form here. So there's Valley Girl again, and we're seeing now a thing happening with her upper eyebrows. That's kind of a weird thing, okay? So what she's showing there is a combination of 2 different muscles working against each other. They're counter-animating each other, okay? One is action unit 1, that's pulling her eyebrows up in the middle of her face, but at the same time, those corrugator muscles are pulling downwards, you know, in the opposite direction. So you can have counter animations like that happen in real faces. And what that, you know, results from that are some really cool and interesting expressions. So you see that combination happening right in here. It's a tug of war going between frontalis on the upwards and corrugator going downwards. So of those 2 muscles though, it's the frontalis muscle that generally wins that tug of war. So the result of that is that because it won that tug of war, the net result is that those eyebrows are going upwards and not downwards. And you get this look that's quintessentially one of distress or fear, or in this case, grief, starting to happen on the face. And, you know, one of the other things you start to see here is that smiling that I was talking about before. So now you start like this guy right here. This is a very, you know, iconic photograph from World War II when the Nazis were overrunning France and marching down the Arc de Champs-Élysées in Paris. This guy was photographed, Frenchman obviously, photographed with a look of unmistakable grief and distress on his face. But again, you can see that he's smiling his face, but he's doing all these other things, particularly that same muscle I mentioned, mentalis, pulling upwards on his middle chin. And if you have that combination combined with, you know, this eyebrow stuff happening here, you go from showing joy to showing grief. And that's a really important thing that we're trying to get across there. And even when you are outright crying like she is here, you're still doing that smiling. You see that, you know, this dude here, the lips are still being pulled up as if smiling. But the really important thing here, and we get back into facts speak here, is that you always, in that look of grief, always have this muscle pulling on mentalis, action unit 17, pulling up on the middle part of the lips. And the signature that determines whether she's laughing or crying is these teeth right here, okay? So in the lower teeth, if you can see the front lower teeth, she's probably laughing. If you can't see them because the lip is obscuring those front lower teeth, she's probably crying, okay? So knowing those little things there is incredibly important to being able to animate those things, whether procedurally or by hand, okay? Let's move on to another similar emotion, but slightly different.
Excuse me, it's so rude. Sorry. Hello?
Hi, Felicia.
Hi, Chris.
Yeah, you heard, right? I've got this great business opportunity, right? And I need to get some money from you.
Some money from me?
Yeah.
What is this business opportunity?
This fellow from Nigeria emailed me just yesterday, and.
All right, so good. My mouse clicker worked there. So she's showing she was showing before, a very negative emotion, but this is a somewhat more muted emotion that's not quite angry, right? With anger, she got really aroused, right? She got her eyes opened up wide. And what you'll see here is that her eyes sometimes open up wide, as I'm showing right here, but why are they opening up wide? Because she's rolling her eyes, right? So this is that eye roll that she's showing at this moment. She does it a few more times here. Is a universal a sign of a different emotion, and that emotion is called contempt. All right. So she's showing like one of the things that you see there with that look of contempt. First of all, you see that sneering happening that I was showing before, action unit 10, and you know that she's showing it first of all because her upper lip is becoming curled here. Second of all, you see this guy right here. This guy right here is a huge part of how faces look and how you should treat these faces, particularly when she's showing a negative emotion. This is called a nasolabial fold, going from nasal to lips, nose to lip, nasolabial fold. And it's a diagonal fold, as you can clearly see here, and it is very prominent on Felicia because of the fact that she is showing deep contempt at this very moment. And you see this in the upper, those 11 showing up on middle part of her eyebrows. But notice her eyelids all this time, with the exception of when she's rolling her eyes. You see that her eyelids are not opening up wide like they did when she was angry. They're drooping.
I need a check from you for $1,000 because that's what he's asking for.
And closing.
Papers and stuff. That is, it's all just kind of like paperwork.
Eye roll.
Yeah, no, that sounds really, really important. But I don't know that I'm going to be able to lend you that.
Come on. You don't need, just listen to me.
So she does about 5 of these eye rolls all the way through this ridiculous conversation that she's having with me at this point. I'm trying to get her to give money to this Nigerian guy who emailed me. But you know, one of the things you see there is that although that's an intense emotion, it is muted. She's not, it's like with contempt, you cannot be bothered to rise up to the occasion because the person that you're dealing with is like way below you in status and you just don't like them, you don't respect them. That's that emotion of contempt. But where you get to where that crosses the line from just this ongoing seething negative emotion, like towards me because of my business offer there, you start to get into something that is a little bit more intense. The same kind of emotion, but it is it can get very, very physical. Like right here, this is kind of the muted expression. You see that portrait of Queen Elizabeth from about 20 years ago. Lucian Freud got into a lot of trouble for this when he did this. Like he got smeared by the Daily Mirror and all these other tabloids in London at the time. But Queen Elizabeth actually said she liked this portrait quite a bit. So I give that, I give her a lot of credit for being self-reflective and honest in her limited queenly sense. But yeah, this dude here, Valley Boy here, is showing those hallmarks or earmarks, can't remember, of that emotion, contempt. And that same muscle I was talking about, that mentalis muscle, you see the pock marks on his chin, that muscle is used a lot to show different kinds of negative emotions. So what I'm going to show here is what happens when that contempt starts to become more momentary and more intense. Like here's Felicia, this is I think the most fun exercise we did here.
I put my gum in that. Okay.
All right. So she's starting to show something a little bit more than that scene.
Oh, the dog pissed in that.
Okay, sorry about that. But yeah, let's just keeping this really, really quick here. And thank God for being able to scrub through here. That you see these emotions, these muscle actions showing up on her face that are a little bit like what I was showing with contempt, but quite a bit more off-model. And that off-model part comes from that stretching muscle, the risorius and platysma muscles, actually in the 20, really starting to dance around on her face. Okay, so, but I mean, all the while you're still seeing those muscles I was talking about before, that pockmarkery, chin muscle mentalis, the 11s happening up here. We see her eyelids continue to droop and squint. They never really open up wide, even when, as I say, the dog pissed in the waters that she's drinking there. So this is a look of outright disgust, okay? Outright being like show here, grossed out, revolted, like this, okay? So a bunch of muscles happening on her face that are just, if anything, just much more intense versions of what's happening when she's, when Queen Elizabeth is posing for a portrait and she's, looking down on her subjects in that look of contempt. Disgust is contempt on steroids, okay? So now Jason Spencer Galsworthy is showing another kind of momentary reaction, and that is surprise, of course. So he's doing what in animation speak is called the take. He's doing takes, okay? That is when you're responding to something. We spend a whole half day on the longer version of my course doing takes. What is it like to do a take? What's happening, first of all, emotionally when you're really surprised? Surprise here, like that's a mild take, dumbstruck. And then we can go on to something that's gobsmacked or Miss America learning that she's a Miss America being a good example of like, oh my God. Okay, so surprise, the fourth emotion that I'm showing here, is a very, very, very momentary one. It's like the thing about surprise is that you are momentarily stupid. In fact, words like stupefied and dumbstruck and, kind of convey that surprise is the emotion where you are the least intelligent, momentarily, we hope, least intelligent that you're ever going to be when you're emotional, okay? So this look of surprise, because of that stupefaction, you see that, on those other emotions I was showing, this face was all red with muscles going, but with surprise, not that much is happening with your whole face, except that, of course, your forehead's going up, your eyelids are going wide, and if you have a little bit of energy left in you, your stupefied face, you might do a lip rounding, like a lip rounding happening, and that is that lip puckering muscle, that kissy face muscle that's being added onto the jaw opening, wide, and those eyebrows going out wide as well. Okay, so excuse me, that's surprise. This fellow here is a guy I worked with when I taught in China. His name is Chris Coleman. And he's a great actor and animator, and in this case, we're showing another motion.
We didn't practice with this. This is not what we rehearsed. It's already.
Yeah, it's going.
No, don't. No.
I'm gonna cut your ear off.
Please, no. No.
I'm gonna slit your throat.
Don't. No, please.
You have got to be where I want you.
No. Please. No. No. No.
Okay, so yeah, good place to stop right there. Obviously I'm showing a new emotion here, the fifth one on our list, and that emotion, of course, is fear. And yeah, I'm catching him here mid-scream, like right there. Obviously, he's screaming in terror, and then I love showing just the last frame of that, just to show you that no, things are okay. We were just play acting there. I worked with Chris for 3 different times. I went to teach this in Shanghai. He's a wonderful, wonderful guy. Good, as you can see there, he's able to show that emotion of fear pretty darn well. So as with that disgust that I showed before and contempt, there are different emotions, different intensities of this emotion. Fear, ranging from small fear, like a mild ongoing fear, like worried. With worried, you have that same thing that I was showing with sadness, that tug of war between action unit 1 going up and action unit 4 going down. You've got the 11s happening here, but along with these worry lines, but worry lines only in the middle of the face, not stretching across the entire face. And when you have that, you start to get this look of consternation or of anxiety. So let's continue that and get a little bit more intense right there. And when you start seeing this, you have something that has a resemblance to grief, sadness that I was showing before, but the real difference between grief and outright fear, what you're seeing here, is the eyes. With grief, the eyes go inward, they go downwards, and they shut off. With fear, it's the opposite. The eyes go wide and they go straight, because when you are in a state of fear, you're generally going to be looking pretty intensely at the thing that is scaring you, so that you know how to get away from that thing as quickly as possible. So yeah, when you have that fear, then you start to get into what Chris was just showing there when I stopped the frame there, which is outright screaming. And I will just say, in the long version of this class, and this is kind of an enticement here, which is in that long version of the class, I spend a good hour or so on screaming. And in fact, when I'm teaching this in a classroom and it's in the school, I give a little warning to the other classes. Hey, just a heads up, we're going to be doing screaming in our class for a little while. And so, yeah, we do that. We're screaming in a class. We're having a great old time screaming and letting out decibels of noise and screaming. And then we capture that and we see what's going on. And as you can see here, a lot is going on, okay? So yeah, once again, I was showing before, the face is just lighting up red, a bunch of stuff happening all at the same time, doing that screaming there. And yeah, we spend some time like actually getting these students to animate a really good scream happening. So it's great, chance to get to let some emotion out, at least vicariously through your character in the form of screaming. So now let's get to the last one. All those previous 5 emotions were either neutral or negative. So there's really only one positive emotion, and that is this guy right here, joy. All right. So, the thing with joy is that this is the easiest emotion to screw up on when you're trying to animate. And that is why you hardly ever see in movies, you hardly ever see your protagonist character, whether it's Pixar, DreamWorks, or whatever, seeing that character really, really break out into a big old smile and big old laugh. Because smiling and laughing is the fastest way to get to fall into the uncanny valley with your character. If you do other emotions like sadness or anger, your audience is going to be very, very, very forgiving if you don't get something quite right. But with smiles and joy, you have to get it really right. And if you miss something, it's gonna look unbelievable and creepy and possibly in an intangible way, but definitely a way that your audience is going to glom onto. There are millions of examples of that, of littering the history of animation and gaming. I won't get into it too much, but just to say it is a peril, and I try in my course to talk about that and to avoid that peril. Like, for example, one thing here is, difference between this smile here and this smile right here. Well, you might see it. Her smile is the same on the lower part of the face, but as you can see, her eyes are different in this part. Hopefully you would agree that this smile, as opposed to this smile, is a little bit less creepy, okay? And the reason it's less creepy is that when we are actually smiling in real life, you're not just smiling with your face, your lower face, you are smiling with your eyes as well. And this is an involuntary thing that we're not generally aware of doing, but we do it nonetheless, and generally do it quite intensely, which is that that muscle I was mentioning before, called the orbicularis oculi muscle, is pulling straight up on the inner parts of your cheeks, and the result is that your lower eyelids, instead of being this convex shape like this, become flat or even concave like this. Hopefully you can see my face and my fingers when I'm doing that, and you have this look of smiling with your eyes, in addition to smiling with your mouth, your lips, okay? And those two things in combination will give that smile on a human face, whether it's animated or real life, will give it a more convincing impression that that human being or that character is having a genuinely good time at this very moment, okay? So we start to get into now shades of this emotion of happiness. And one of the things you see here, go between this, look at her corners of her lips, between this smile and this smile is this very subtle thing that I call the frown smile. So that frown smile is a thing that happens. Jon Stewart is showing it right here. The setup here is that he is he's in the United States Capitol. He's just testified as a star witness for an advocacy group for 9/11 first responders, and he's testified to this guy over here, who is Mitch McConnell, who at the time was Senate Majority Leader. They looked at each other face to face during these hours of testimony in which John was championing the cause of first responders for 9/11. But now John is not in a suit and tie as he was before. He's in a t-shirt. And because he's in a t-shirt, Mitch McConnell doesn't know it's Jon Stewart and walks right past him. And that's what you see there. And Jon Stewart is looking at the guy who's photographing him, and he's like, this is hilarious, right? And you can tell that on his face, he's having a great time. There's a mischievous smile on his face. But the thing, look at his smile closely, and you see that you're not seeing that smile look. You see instead that his smile is doing this, as if in a frown. But you look at his face and it's like, there's no mistaking. He's not frowning, he's smiling, he's having a great time. And he's having a great time, you see, because he's smiling with his eyes, as was shown before, and he's got the lip stretching that happens when you smile just like that, but he's doing this extra thing in which he's bringing the corners of his lips down at the same time, and it's this really weird looking smile, but nonetheless, if you break it down as I am here, it's weird. If you see it in real life without any context, it's not weird at all. He's just having a great time, and that frown part is just a mischievous or perhaps even slightly embarrassed element of how he's feeling at that very moment, but how he's feeling is nonetheless very, very positive, in this case, sarcastically positive. Okay, so it's kind of a shtick, you're seeing all these celebrities here showing variations of that frown smile, including Patrick Stewart right here, and he's showing way too much. If you're an animator, you generally don't want to use this much frowning when you're smiling, as Patrick Stewart doing here, but nonetheless, you see it is possible to frown and smile at the same time, opposing muscles, but still working towards a very complex, believable, and nuanced emotion, that frown smile. Okay, so let's move on to a basic grin. So grinning is when you show your teeth when you're smiling. So there she is, Valley girl that is, lowering her lower lip, and as a result, you see her teeth and she's grinning. Okay, fair enough, but there's still something that's a little bit off-putting about this grin. What she's missing is this other involuntary thing that she can do, which is this. Okay, you see the difference between this, and you see with this, she's doing this little involuntary raising her upper lip. It's an action unit, it's kind of an obscure action unit in which she is slightly bearing the gums above her teeth. And the result of that, if you look at her upper lip, is that that's doing that same upside down, not going, like smiley, it's going frowny, but, obviously she's not frowning there. She's looking pretty happy right there. So, these are things to look out for when you're animating, okay? That you can sometimes see paradoxical things on a face, like frowns where that she's smiling, and be okay with those paradoxical things. Those paradoxes are your friend when it comes to animating faces, whether procedurally or not, with some believability and complexity and nuance. Okay, so here's the opposite kind of that front of that, where she's happy but frowning in order to maybe offset it. This is where she is not happy, but she wants to fake being happy. So, like Jennifer Connelly right here is kind of doing that pretty well here, which is if you're, what I call it the wedding picture grin, because it's like, take the picture already, please take the picture, that kind of feeling is like, it's a kind of a stress, but that stress is coming because you're overcompensating, like a politician. When you're overcompensating, but you're not necessarily happy, but you want to give the impression that you are happy. So part of your subconscious will say, well, people will think I'm happy if I show my teeth a little bit more. So you go like that. It's really nice to see you. Like my sister-in-law runs a lodge up in North Ontario, and you can see over the course of the day when I go and visit her that at the beginning of the day, when guests are coming in, she's smiling like a pleasant smile. But at the afternoon, when she's really getting tired and guests are still coming in, that she starts to smile like this. And like there is an evolution of a feeling that's creeping in, and that feeling is stress. So yeah, this is a stressed look of happiness there. So then we get to laughing. Okay, so laughing, I'm showing a still here, but I dare not show you an animation here. And the reason is that it's when you're like doing laughter on a character's face is the worst task you can be assigned. And some of you may already know that laughter is definitely like it's a free fall into the uncanny valley. If you try to do it, you get something just slightly wrong on that face. Okay, so there she is going from laughing to crying. Yeah, just saying that like laughing is this kind of convulsive thing. It's an involuntary thing. The convulsive, of course, happens. Ha 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 ha. Is that your whole upper body as well as your lower and upper face are going into spasm. Okay, and it's a good spasm. It's a spasm that is contracting, releasing, ha ha ha. That's what's happening when you laugh. But those spasms are happening asynchronously from one muscle to another, from the shoulders up to the neck to the head. All that's happening in their own different things. There is nothing pose to pose about laughter at all. So if you try to think of laughter as one pose going another, you will fall into the uncanny valley pretty quickly. So yeah. Laughter is very, very difficult to do. Yeah, even if you performance capture it, that laughter is going to be wrong because the performance capture can't capture how hard as you try, will not be able to capture those nuances that I just was talking about there. So just showing this is Elizabeth Moss. This is from a film she did about 5 years ago with Jordan Peele. Jordan Peele's second film, I believe, it's called Us. Yeah, what you're seeing here is this great scene in which she's kind of a zombie. Elizabeth Moss' character is kind of a zombie right now. And at first she's horrified with what she has turned into, but then that horror turns into something completely different. I love this shot. All right, what the fuck was that? Okay, let's play it backwards. Okay, first she's smiling and laughing. Okay, clearly that is a look of joyous laughter happening on her face. She's got all this smooth, you know, like her smiling. You see, look at her eyes, that her eyes are like just joyous right now. Okay, so I'm running this backwards, remember? But then she goes into this other thing, running backwards right here. From now she's in this other thing. You see that she's now going backwards again, but in that backward, you see that got the smiling happening on her face as she was when she was laughing. But you've got, remember that all important chin muscle, that montalis, pressing up, and you see, notice that what I was saying before, you can't see her front lower teeth as you could when I stopped it on laughter. And yeah, you're seeing there's something that is like crying. All right, so that crying is happening because of those things I just mentioned. Let's keep going backwards here. Okay, and we get to the beginning of the clip in which she's doing that, and that is the scream that I was showing before when I was showing fear. She's horrified, but over the course of, if you play it forwards again, she is going from this very creepy shot, incredibly great shot, I think, in that film, Us, from going from this transition from you know, complete horror to complete joy. Complete different opposite difference from what a healthy non-zombie human would do. Okay, screaming. All right. So I've been talking about just the anatomy of emotion and what's going on with various stills and snapshots, and now we're starting to get, as we saw with Elizabeth Moss, into some actual motion. This is the fun part, the animation part here. So I'm going to spend a little time in it, not that much in this very short lecture version, definitely not enough. But to get enough, I really need to have more time. But I am, for good reason, hopefully you see, putting a lot of emphasis on the seeing and the drawing and the mechanism of a face before getting into animating the face. Longer version, I get into a lot more exercises, but for now, just going to show that there are kind of three basic ways that you can take in how you're directing your character. And I say directing as opposed to just animating here, because you've got different ways that you can approach stuff here. And I'm going in order here of doing nothing or under the top or over the top. You know, animators, particularly, you know, production animators are going into cartoony stuff, generally want to jump straight to number 3 there. They want to get over the top. That's the fun part of animating, right? But really, I want to kind of get across that there's a lot of really fun stuff in the first 2 episodes, doing nothing or under the top animation. One of the things that I really get into is restraint. I want animators to understand that there's a lot of power in restraint, whether you're doing stuff in performance capture or doing stuff hand keyframed. So this, I promised I would get to Bob Dylan. Here he is right here. So back in 1965, right? Andy Warhol's around. He's in New York City and he's really doing weird popular shit. He's doing it out of his studio called The Factory in south of Midtown and along I think Broadway in Manhattan. And he's doing these things. You know, Andy Warhol at this time is developing, along with musicians who are also in New York, developing this art movement and music movement called minimalism. Okay, he's around here at the same time that Philip Glass and others developing this thing, minimalism, right? So I mean, that's you know, Andy Warhol did a lot of things. Minimalism is one of the things he started, and one of the things you see as a manifestation of that is screen tests. So he does these things that he releases in his installations called screen tests. And what are screen tests? Basically, they're these boring pieces of 1-minute films in which these guys sit in front of a camera and don't do anything. They do nothing at all, right? Okay, so he does these screen tests of a bunch of folks, his friends, and one of his friends at the time is Bob Dylan. So Bob Dylan comes in sometime in April 1965 to do a screen test, and the instruction is just sit in the fucking chair and do nothing for a minute, okay? And so that's what Bob Dylan is doing right here. I'm just going to play the full screen test here. I think it's about 50 seconds long. Actually, let me say freeze frame. Yeah, good. That's a good place to freeze frame. I'm getting really lucky with my freeze framing. So, I mean, as you can see, Bob Dylan was hardly doing it, basically doing nothing, like Andy Warhol told him to do. But he's got all these tiny little things happening on his face, like that little, he's dimpling his lip corners there. And otherwise, he's just like doing like various random things. Like one thing he does is this thing right here, where he's just like touching his, like, what's that about? Why is he touching his, what's that all about? The gist is, and when I ask, I can't be interactive here and ask you guys what you're feeling when you see that, but generally when I do ask, people come back with these negative emotions, like discomfort or boredom or stress and all these other negative things. See, if the screen test is over, as I told you, it's a very short piece of footage there. But people come back with these negative things, but he's not doing anything outright negative during that time. But you pick up something, right? Even though he's really doing nothing with his face. And I'll just say that, pull back the curtain here and say that what was actually happening there was that Bob Dylan was about to walk out on Andy Warhol and never see him or talk to him again. The reason being, as you may know, they were in a love triangle at that moment with this one woman, Edie Sedgwick. She was called the factory girl at that time. And because of this just drama happening in their lives, Bob Dylan was completely agitated and completely in this state of contempt that he was hiding from Andy Warhol. They never spoke to each other again. What you saw in that 1 minute there was literally the end of a friendship, okay? But you see nothing on his face, on Bob Dylan's face, other than these kind of slight little micro expressions that he's showing. But one thing that you never see is smiling, okay? I'll get to my phone Ryan in a second here. You never see him even smile once. So the thing about, like, when we're hanging out and talking to each other, if you notice, if you're having lunch with your friend and you're talking with them and that friend otherwise looks neutral as that friend is listening or just doing nothing, talking to you, you will nonetheless generally see a very slight upward turning of your friend's lip corners, because that we are conditioned. Even though we think we're being neutral and not showing anything at all, we are conditioned from birth to show just a slight amount of smile. And that smile is there to show just a default, to show that we're engaged. I call that a social neutral pose on a face, as opposed to a literal neutral pose. If you were to just go through and show a literal neutral pose, like Bob Dylan was showing there, that absence of that slight lip corner thing is what gives away that negativity.
I want you to consider
showing another footage here. This is from
beating
my film,
alcohol
Ryan.
in the same way that you beat cocaine.
What you're seeing there here is 17 seconds of Ryan doing nothing. Okay.
What?
I still find this astonishing. The guy who animated this I was lucky enough to work. He was a student at Seneca College. His name is Sasha Kapachin-Panga. He is now the lead animator with Sony ImageWorks. Has been for about 4 or 5 years now. I'm just astonished at how he has evolved his career. But this is kind of where it started. This shot right here, he did a lot of shots in the film Ryan. This was his star shot, and that star shot comes from the fact that he did hardly anything at all. In this, like he's doing stuff with Ryan's face, but for 17 awkward seconds, Ryan is doing nothing, just as you saw kind of Bob Dylan doing earlier. And it's that doing nothing that you want to use as a powerful tool, as opposed to doing stuff or expressing on a face. And it's where I'm showing some other examples here are just how less is going to be more. We'll get to her in a second. I know we're getting towards the end here, so I'm going to just really go through this quickly. This is from a film called The Kids Are All Right.
You are such a pusher.
All right, so the setup here is that she's in a same-sex relationship with Annette Bening, but oh my God, why is she kissing this guy? What the fuck? So she gets away. Awkward.
I don't know where that came from. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry.
Jules.
Not Ruffalo being cool.
It's okay.
No, I just
It's okay. It was okay.
But I shall return.
All right. So Julianne Moore's a lot of things, and one of the things that she gets not enough credit for is her comic chops. So this, I'm playing it back frame by frame here, and you're seeing she's looking cheerful. She's putting on a brave, happy, laughing face, but then you see. Watch what's happening with her upper eyebrows. Watch what's happening with this look of anguish that starts to appear on her face. And then by the last frame, that face is in pain right there. Okay. Play it
But I
back in
shall
real time.
return.
It goes back, you don't even notice it because it happens within literally 2 frames. But Julian, well, I don't know, she consciously is doing this, but the result that happens on screen in that one tiny, like 1/20th of a second is what makes that shot, okay? And just saying, animate like that. Think of those micro expressions that happen in that 1/20th of a second. Keep under the top. Don't try to be explicit, be suggestive, like Julian Moore was just showing that. So I'm going to skip this because, you know, there's lots of nuance and showing those smiles, but really we want to get to some really important stuff because I do want to leave a little bit of time for a little bit of feedback from you guys. But yeah, showing there 3 different, slightly different smiles, equal, lower, and you know, I will show this. Come on. All right. So like right there, that's still right there. So you see within those, you see like cheerfulness on the left, stress in the middle, and then contempt on the right, with just a slight different pull of some muscles in the middle and lower part of the face, very slightly different from one another. If I show stills and demonstrate them, you might say there's hardly different at all, but when you see them in motion, you pick up on the difference in that emotion, and that emotion can be wildly different between these 3 different examples here. All right, so let's just go over the top here. I'm just going to show, why not? Let's show Roger Rabbit. All right, so.
Okay, let's set him open.
Just give me a bicarb. I'll be fine.
So right there, wedding picture grant Jennifer Conroy was doing before. Roger Rabbit has anatomy. He's a cartoon guy, but he's still got anatomy, just like we do. Yeah. So that's what Chris in that live action was showing before. A scream that's coming out of fear. Okay, so sorry, I'm just gonna move on to this guy. This film right here.
They're just shooting people, Grant. They're just killing people.
This is a film done by a Canadian director named Bruce McDonald called Pontypool.
Stop killing people. You gotta stop killing people. You gotta stop. You gotta stop. Stop. Stop.
I keep showing this over the years because this guy is Stephen McHattie. And if you're not from Canada, you don't know who this dude is. But if you are from Canada, you likely do. And I'm Canadian, so I love showing off these obscure Canadian shit things. And Stephen McHattie is one of those examples. He has the best face ever. And you see that in the way that he screams. It's like those wrinkles that I was talking about come out way more on Stephen than they do perhaps on like someone like Felicia, who's younger. Stephen's got a well-worn face and he uses that, he milks that, and it gets some great stuff out of it. And one of the things that you see in that fixed expressive Stephen McHattie face is you see Roger Rabbit. So you see the same action moves here, the same ones, okay? And like, you know what a face does, whether it's cartoony or whether it's real, okay? And when you can do that, particularly in the gaming sphere, as most of us are in here that we're talking here, you've got gold, all right? But I keep staying, not necessarily going over the top. And yeah, I do, it's 7:23 and we're kind of on time here. We'll have not 5 minutes, but maybe 3 minutes if we stay on time here. But this is a kind of like really good example of staying under the top, and I'm staying live action here because there's something really compelling about it. Hopefully you agree with what I'm going to show you. So this is a video from a charity of doctors who, like, you know, like Doctors Without Borders, sort of like that, but their job is to go to impoverished countries and to do cosmetic surgery where it's really needed. And this, as you'll see, this little girl here really needed it, and there's a story that you will see in this little film. Here it is.
Her face is a map of the world, is a map of the world. You can see she's a beautiful girl, she's a beautiful girl. And everything around her is a silver pool of light. she's born in black and white. Makes you feel warmer when you're trying to remember what you are. She likes to leave you hanging on a word. Suddenly I see, this is what I wanna be. Suddenly I see, why the hell it means so much to me. Suddenly I see, but this is what I wanna be. Suddenly I see, why the hell it means so much to me. And she's taller than most, and she's looking at me. I can see her eyes looking from the page of a magazine. She makes me feel like I could be a tower, big strong tower, yeah. The power to be, the power to give, the power to see, yeah, yeah. Suddenly I see, she got the power to be, the power to give, the power to see, yeah, yeah. Suddenly I see, she got the power to be, the power to give, the power to see, yeah, yeah, yeah. Suddenly I see, she got the power to be, the power to give, the power to see, yeah, yeah. Suddenly I see, she got the power to be, the power to give, the power to see, yeah, yeah. Suddenly I see, this is what I wanna be. Suddenly I see, why the hell it means so much to me. Suddenly I see, this is what I wanna be. Suddenly I see, why the hell it means so much to me. Oh, yeah, yeah. Suddenly I see, why the hell it means so much to me. Yeah, yeah. Suddenly I see, why the hell it means so much to me.
Yeah, so hopefully you see that there is a lot of story happening in this real life video. And one of the things that running out of time here, but there are things that are happening in her story, her human story, that you see manifested on her face at these different times that kind of touch on the sort of emotions that I was talking about before. Like right here is where, like I said, camera screen flips over, her eyes will tell you when. Her eyes are kind of telling you when at this point right here, that her eyes start to go wide, right? Nothing else is happening on her face except those eyes are going slightly wide, right? But then, she's in this, that slight emotional change. It's like, that something powerful is going on in her head at that moment. And that thing is disbelief. She does not yet comprehend in that short period of time what she looks like when she looks at her reflection or the image in the camera. So now she's coming in for investigation, curiosity, coming in. She's actually physically coming in, looking closer at what's there. What is it? What am I actually seeing? She's still not quite comprehending it. But then there's this moment that you see this consternation, like that concern, like that she's focusing, she's frowning. There's a release, and that release is the big story here. It's like, oh my God, she's thinking, yes, I understand. Okay, the eyelids droop slightly. Oh yes, is what she's saying at that point. Aha, that is me. I could go on more, but because there's lots more going on there. But that stuff that's going on there is incredibly powerful, and it's under the top. She's never like that. This guy over here is like grinning away like crazy. But you see when you play this forward, she's hardly doing anything with her face at all. But you hopefully get the drama and the powerful emotional story that's happening, that she's seeing her face in a life-changing moment for the very first time. And you want to get a story like that, whether it's in a game or whether it's in production. You want a story like that. That is gold, and you convey that gold by being under the top, not over the top. I think I'm done at this point. I've covered just a tiny amount of what I want to cover here, but it's 7:29. I literally have 1 minute, unless we go a couple of minutes over, to maybe go over questions if you have them here. But yeah, I'm done for now. I'm going to stop sharing and just say it was fun, really fun to do that. And thanks again, guys, for having me here.
No problem, Chris. I mean, this was an amazing lecture. Lots of things to digest. I do think that we are right at the very end, obviously, of our time. However, if folks want to ask a couple of questions, I think Chris, if you're willing to stay an extra.
Yeah, I'm happy to. Yeah, as long as you. the time limit is yours, not mine so much.
Got it. We do have a question from Nicole asking, can you speak to eyes and micro eye movements of what's good practice for that?
I mean, like the really most critical part for getting the eyes right is in happiness. And it's that one muscle, the cheek, it's a cheek raiser muscle. It's action unit 6 in fact speak, that you want to get, as I was saying before, smiling with your eyes is incredibly important. Things, I mean, I will go into observation, and I do in the longer formats here, but one of the things that you often see is that when you're smiling like that, the eyes will smile about a tenth of a second later than the lower part of the face smiles, okay? And if you want to convey not having a good time, don't use that cheek raising muscle at all. For example, crow's feet, one of the byproducts of that squinting happens. Crow's feet get that across, that eye smiling really, really well. So if you have wrinkle maps built into your characters, milk those crow's feet wrinkle maps to the hilt. If you can do that, I love when characters include those crow's feet wrinkle maps. It's like, use those. Okay. Micro expressions, like, I mean, you see it in a film like The Pink Panther. Peter Sellers, not Peter Sellers, but the guy who plays his boss, can't remember his name. You see this twitching happening with that lower eyelid, going with that look of stress. You really show stress by doing that, but you can get that under the top look of stress by that twitching. Okay, so I've given a really long answer there. Sorry about the long answer.
No worries.
Yeah.
We do have a live question from Anna. Anna, go ahead. You're clear to talk.
Hi, Anna. You're muted, Anna.
Hi, Chris. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now.
Okay, great. I learned about your work from Jamie Hercombe, and it's been a huge inspiration to me and my students. We've been looking at your film Ryan a lot, so thank you so much for that. Thank you. Yeah, I just have a quick question about advice for working with motion capture performers, like how I can work with them to help them understand the way that the technology is interpreting them, and then get the best performance.
No, I understand. That's a big question, kind of difficult to answer. The most obvious thing is, sight lines, like if the person's being mocapped and not necessarily looking in the right direction of what the thing that they should be focusing on. Is like getting across to your actor at the time, well, you're looking at that thing over there that's not there, but that being a kind of an obvious example is, if you're working with a performer, try to get that sight line right. Try to get something in there that the character, the mocapped actor can actually look at as being one example. But when you're dealing with mocap, you're dealing with directing a character, directing an actor, the mocapped guy, and it's like a lot of what I try to get across in this class is, as I say, not animation. It is kind of directorial, which is, you as a director have to empathize with the character, and you have to convey that empathy to your performer to the point that that performer understands and can do, if they're a good actor being mocap, that they can do what you're after without you having to explicitly tell them to smile and tell them to frown, etc. Don't tell them to do that. Give them the feeling, let them know what that feeling is, and give them something to look at. Done.
All right, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Anna, for the question. Let's go ahead and move to another written question from Anthony. How do you think about balancing realism and stylization in animation?
Oh man, that's
a big question, I know.
Yeah, no, I'm getting really, really tough questions. I mean, I would say that, if you're going between, you got two different words there, realism and stylization, but the word that should be there is believability, and believability is different than realism, okay? They're not the same thing. You want to get something that may not be obviously what you would think is real, but is something that will come up and show not something creepy, but something that is nuanced, okay? Like a frown at the same time as a smile is something that can be very stylized, but it's nonetheless something that you wouldn't intuitively think is realism. It's something that nonetheless, because of that being a nuanced thing that John Stewart, as I was saying, showing, is something that's like, aha, yeah, a person would do that. And that becomes then something that's believable. And that believability straddles between, stylization like Roger Rabbit, and the real thing like Stephen McCallie.
All right, we have 2 questions left. We'll do another one live. Liam, go ahead.
Hey, I was gonna say, I thank you so much. It was super interesting. I wish it could be longer. I remember watching something about the way you guys use, or CD Projekt Red used Jolly in Cyberpunk, and I thought that was so crazy how much performance you can get just from.
It was great work. Yeah.
Just from like audio. I didn't even know that was the thing, but I was gonna ask about how you approach like a scene, like if you have, just even if it's a short animation, how do you go from it as a story, as like a part of a story, as a performance or part of a story, to an animation? Do you start with breaking it down into emotional beats, or could you talk about that?
I mean, like, how do I like make a film like out of like story, like going from storyboarding to a full like a full-on film? You mean, or like a shot?
Yeah, more like a shot. More like if you have like, let's say even just a line, and you want to turn that into a facial performance. Do you usually go in and write the subtext of the, almost like a director would, or how do you approach that?
No. I don't, because the last thing you want to do if you're directing someone is to try to tell them what the subtext, what they should be subtexting. You kind of don't want to do that. I mean, this is what you were seeing when I was doing those exercises with Felicia, is that I set up a situation, right? And I know, because I've set up that workshop situation, that it's likely to arouse the feeling that I want, like anger or contempt or whatever. Because yeah, if you're someone who's calling someone out of the blue and saying, "Give me money for this Nigerian email dude," you're probably going to get a look of exasperation and contempt, right? So you set up a situation where you can kind of predict and empathize how your guy you're working with, and it could be yourself in front of a mirror, how you're going to respond, okay? And don't try to just explicitly say, well, no, you're happy, but you underneath you're really feeling fear. And you kind of don't want to do that. I would say you set up a situation in which you kind of can predict that the person is going to look happy, but nonetheless going to show or feel some fear, and you go with that, whether you're acting in front of a mirror or whether you're directing, really not animating but directing someone.
All right, we have one more question left. This one's from Lucas, and he asks, how would you transfer all of this amazing lecture material to facial capture and onto a metahuman? I hope my question makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, so I really like metahumans, I gotta say. Like as a rigger, I do a lot of rigging with my line of work right now, and like I'm looking at metahumans, and that's like this is really nicely done. 3 Lateral has been evolving this stuff out for about 10 years, I think now, and metahumans a big culmination of their work. But I mean, metahumans got. I mean, that actually, Urs from who's developing the metahuman rig was like, is his quote, I remember him saying to me, "Facts is facts." That's what he said. And like metahuman is a very faxy rig. I mean, those yellow controls on the baseboard adhere to a lot of the stuff that I've been, like all of the stuff that I've been talking about here. Those sliders do those action moves. They do them really, really well on metahumans. So it's like, the answer to your question is like, I could answer it in many different ways, but one way I can answer in a short time is, you've got the fact stuff there. You can do the stuff, all the stuff that I was demonstrating in the last hour and a half. It's really well suited to them.
All right. Well, Chris, this has been very enlightening, very wonderful lecture. I've been watching and reading through the Slack comments. Everybody is just, amazed that they're getting a chance to hear from you live, and the fact that all of this can be applicable towards what they're learning in this fellowship. So we'd like to say and extend a thank you to you for taking your time out of your busy schedule to come and talk to us. And this has been very, very informative, and we love it. So thank you so much, Chris.
It's a really pleasure doing this. It's a privilege, honor, and privilege to do this here. And thanks for having me. And I had a lot of fun doing this.